Thank you for clicking on this video. The reason I like this video is because it's one of my favourite subjects that I like to sit and daydream about on a regular basis, but I do it also formally twice a year. Now the question is that I like to think about is, what are all the things that I like to do or want to do but never get round to doing? So my question to you is for you to think about all the things that you keep saying to yourself that you'd like to do but never get round to doing. People to see, places to go, people to visit, things to learn, new activities, new experiences. Now I do this twice a year, normally at Christmas time, and on my summer holidays get a blank piece of paper in the back of my diary and just jot down, right, what am I going to do? Now I normally set it out in three areas. I do short term, which is say the next 6 months, medium term, say 12 to 18 months, and long term, say 2 years. I find it very difficult to plan past 2 years. I do have a pension, not that it's worth very much, but I have done a little bit of long-term planning. So I just want you to think about those things. So you just need a blank piece of paper and to write those down. You may want to stop the video now and do those, or you can do it afterwards. So think about short-term 6 months, medium-term 12 to 18 months, long-term 2 years, and think of all the things that you'd love to do. Think work and think personal. So if you're going to turn the video off, now's a good time to do it. Write the list and then come back to us. Okay, so we're all back together again now. So we've got this list. Well, what are we going to do with it? Well, the reason I'll just perhaps tell you a little story why I do this is purely and simply is 12 years ago my nan died, and she sort of lived in London all her life. And she lived through the Blitz and brought children up through the Blitz. My granddad was a bit of a lad. He remortgaged the house a couple of times at Wembley and White City on the Docks. She used to have to fight off the bailiffs. But when she left us, it was actually the day before my birthday. She died on the 7th of November, and my birthday's on the 8th. And it was on a Sunday afternoon. And when she died, she had her children there, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, and her great-great-grandchildren, because my sister started a bit early. But when she left us, I'm adamant she left this world with something I want to leave it with. And the answer is no regrets. Because when you're 93, yeah, great old innings, but it's a bit late to sit there and think, do you know what, I really wish I'd have done this, or I really wish I'd have done that. So when you come to retirement age, that sometimes it's no point sitting and thinking, God, I'm so glad I spent all those years sat in that office doing a job I didn't really enjoy. So this is the time to do is spend a bit of time doing some goal setting. And this is what we're going to look at. You might want to call it objective setting, blue sky thinking, all the other great terminologies people come up with this. But simply, it's about achieving things that you want to do. Yes, it does involve some hard work. There's no magic formulas to these. But what I'm going to talk to you about is starting off at the start and helping you to get to the end. So you've got your lists. And now once we've got the list, we now can do what I want to draw on this flip chart. And it's very simple. We've got 2 lines, and we know where we are now, and we know where we want to get to, because you've written all your ideas down. Now the biggest problem that we have is the gap. Okay, so we know where we are now, we know where we want to get to. Now if you wanted to, you could actually start to write this as what we call a SMART objective. So if you like these types of things, this might help. You need to be specific about what it is you want to achieve. You need to be able to measure. Now the A is it agreed with other people? If you're doing with this other people, do they buy into it and agree? Is it realistic? Now that's quite important, because I can do all the positive thinking and all the goal setting in the world, but I'm still not going to run the 100 metres quicker as Usain Bolt. You know, you've got to be realistic with these things. And also, put a time scale to it. So you could write your objective or your goal like that, specific, so be precise. Don't say, I just want to lose weight. Yeah, by what measurements? I want to get fitter. Well, how can we measure that if you've actually got fitter? So try and put an actual value to these things. You'll find it a lot easier to measure your success. But I'll talk about some examples here that you can do that. So we've got to think about the gap. So it may be on your list. There may be, you want to, I don't know, get fit, or you may want to travel, or you may want to go and see somebody. You may want to enrol in an evening class, you may want to take on another qualification, you may want to get a new job. Now, what normally stops us from achieving these things is we see it as a too big a thing. I can't possibly run a marathon, 26 point whatever miles it is. I can't possibly organise myself to go to Australia or the other side of the world, or I can't possibly organise that wedding or that family do, or I can't organise myself to go and visit my auntie and uncle up in Norwich or Lincoln or wherever it is. Because the problem is we see this gap as a too big a thing. What we've got to actually try and work out is what are the very first steps. So it may be booking that holiday, the first thing you've got to do is have a conversation with your family or conversation with your boss about booking the time off. What you've got to work out is what is the very first step that you've got to achieve. Now, if you can work that out, you can achieve what it is you want to achieve, because that is normally the most difficult thing to do. So if you can work out what that first step is. So, for example, I think always a good example is to run a marathon. Now, if you want to run 26 point whatever miles it is, the first thing you've got to do is to learn to put, or get some trainers, to walk out your front door, run up the drive and run for a couple of 100 yards. If you can do that, you can run a marathon. I mean, if Oprah Winfrey can do a sub 4 hour marathon, anyone can do it. And if Sir Ranulph Fiennes can do 7 marathons in 7 continents in 7 days at the age of 65 after having heart surgery 6 months earlier, it puts it into perspective. And what Ezzy Izzard did with 43 marathons in 53 days in 2009, that puts it all into perspective. Those guys can do it, is because they worked out what the first step was. So if you can get 100, 200 yards up the road, the next thing you've got to do is to work out how you can get 300 to 400 yards, then 5 to 6, half a mile, then learn to run a mile, then run a mile and a half, learn to run for 15 minutes and 20 minutes, and it's just a gradual step process. And it's the same with booking a holiday. What's the first thing you've got to do? Quite often it's going on the internet to look at some research, having a conversation with your family. So if you can do that, you can do it. Now, I quite like going on cycling holidays or weekends or just events, but obviously I have a family and that involves decision making with them. So the first thing I need to do to perhaps doing this cycling weekend is not worrying about fixing my bike and maintaining it and getting there and the food and the hotels, but the first thing I've got to do is just have a chat with my family and say, look, have we got anything else planned that weekend? Do you mind if I go on that cycle? And sometimes the first step is the hardest, but if you can share it with somebody else, we can then work out what the second step is. And then up here, yeah, it will be about where we're going to stay, what time we're going to leave, and what tyres I'm going to put on my bike, and what's the weather and things like that. But I can worry about those later. I've got to just focus on these things first. So please start to think about what you can control and what you can develop. And then we can start to build the first few steps, which will help us to achieve where we want to go. So if it's to go and see somebody, what is stopping you picking up the phone saying, hi, when's it good for me to come and see you? Perhaps you want to go and jump out of an aeroplane. Well, you can get on the internet and find out where they do these mad charity events. It may be that you want to take on a new qualification. It may be you want to go to the theatre. Obviously, with the introduction of the internet and that wonderful thing called Google, we can actually find most of the first steps at our fingertips. It's just actually making us to do those things. It may be you want to redecorate the house. Well, the first thing you've got to do is, sit down with a plan, or perhaps have a conversation with somebody and just find out what those first steps are, or maybe just going down to a DIY store and getting some ideas or some magazines. It's the first step. But then once you've worked out the first step, you've got to think of the second step, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth, and so on. And if you can use that philosophy, you could be amazed at how much more you can do, and you can start taking control of the situation instead of procrastinating and always saying to yourself, oh, I'd really like to do that. Well, what's stopping you? If in doubt, give it a go. So please give this a go. Think about your SMART objective. That may be something to think about. Please think about what I do twice a year. I sit down in my diary and think about the things that I want to do. I always think about my nan at the back of it, because she certainly inspired me to do that. Because as I said, when we're 93, hopefully we'll get to that age, but you can't look back and think, oh, do you know what? I really wish I'd have gone and done something, or this or that, because then it's a little bit too late. So if in doubt, give it a go now. Thank you for your time and enjoy achieving and enjoy doing your achievements. Thank you.